This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 6 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, presented by Equestrian Life, exclusive coverage of the world of dressage. We would like to thank our sponsors, Equestrian Life. They can be found at equestrianlife.com, and Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com. This is Chris Stafford in Lexington, Kentucky.
And I'm Heather Blitz in Esbjerg, Denmark, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show presented by Equestrian Life.
Well, hi Heather, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine now that the sun's setting a little bit. It's quite hot here today in Denmark. That's not so usual for us. How are you doing?
Well, we had a bit of a respite here, which we're thrilled to have. You know, this time of year it's usually so hot and humid, and we had some cooler temperatures, which made it a lot more comfortable for outdoor activities. Perfect riding weather, actually, although I didn't get a chance to ride. So, but it's going to turn around a bit now. This weekend, of course, July 4th weekend over here. It's a big weekend of fireworks and partying, and hopefully it'll be very pleasant tomorrow evening as we celebrate the 4th here. So, big weekend here, and we've got a big show today, Heather.
Yeah, we're going to hear from Reese Koffler again, who comes on to our show on a regular basis, and she's been to Gladstone competition there at the Grand Prix Championships. She's going to give us a report on how it's gone for her there, and then we're going to hear from Mary Wanless as she explains her popular teaching philosophy and what she's been up to these days. So we're looking forward to that.
And so what have you been up to this week?
Well, I've been a little busy this week. I've actually been out of town and drove down. It's about an 8-hour drive down to Aachen from here, and got to watch the first phase of the CDIO down there, the dressage competition. So that was quite a treat to catch an eyeful for 2 full days, plus the other tour, the CDI 5-star. So that's been quite fun. What have you been up to?
Well, just work, basically. And following Aachen, of course, thanks to the internet, following Aachen, following Wimbledon, because I'm also a tennis fan, Heather. So, and I know Mary is. So, we've been preoccupied with the tennis, and thanks to Twitter. This is a marvelous tool, this Twitter, Heather. I just get all kinds of alerts, and so, yeah, it's been basically a combination of work and following the sport and following Aachen and all the reports that we're getting again through Twitter. So that's been fun, that this new technology keeps us right up to date with what's happening around the world in the sports arena. So
nobody can hide for a second, can they?
No, you really can't, can you? No, really. No, but that's fun. You know, for those of us that are, you know, fans of any particular sport or activity, you know, it's so much more immediate now. It's all about instant gratification, isn't it?
It is. Well, and it's just, it is fascinating. And, you know, we have all these things now. I wonder what's going to be available next week.
Well, that's right. You never really know, do you? And
no.
You know, it's very easy to get obsessed with this technology and, you know, and try to stay on the cutting edge of it, but you never know what's around the corner. And, you know, when you think about the Walkmans, do you remember those big old Walkmans that came out about 20 years ago? The Sony Walkman?
Oh, my gosh, yes.
And we
thought, I think, you know, before the iPod.
Yeah.
Yeah,
before the iPod, I think mobile.
It was, and it was one of the biggest selling gadgets up until the time of the iPod, and it holds second place still, I believe, that Walkman. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing how big they were. I was watching pictures the other day on TV of, you know, this big pack that you would clip onto your waistband, and it was huge. But because we were portable, we thought this was the best thing since sliced bread. But now, of course, if you can't put it in your pocket, it's too big, right?
That's right. Well, I wish I still had my original bag cell phone. You know, that could be something that could be such an old-fashioned novelty. Maybe it'd sell for a lot of money now. That wasn't even that long ago.
All right. Well, we've got a lot to get through on the show today, Heather. So we're going to kick off now with the news of the week. And the big news, of course, out of Germany this week is the suspension of Isabel Werth from competition following an FEI tribunal that found a positive doping test on a horse of hers called Whisper that was competing in the small tour. And that, of course, is big news out of Europe for the sport, and very difficult to hear one of the biggest names in the sport be the subject of a positive dope test, but it's happened in other sports a lot more recently. We heard of Michael Whitaker, the British show jumper, who was also suspended last week and was not able to compete at Aachen. So two big names out of Aachen this week, Heather. I think it doesn't matter which sport it's in, whether it's an equestrian sport or cycling or no matter what sport, it gets on the world stage, and it's very upsetting for everyone involved, isn't it?
It is really upsetting, and it's hard to keep it all straight. The why and the how and the who, and of course there are so many different reasons to need to help our horses out, and we want to do our best to keep them healthy and to keep them happy, and a lot of times it can just be a fine line between right and wrong, and not everybody gets all the details, and it's a tough thing when you want to do the best thing for your horse, and something slips through the cracks, something doesn't go like you thought it would, and it's not a good thing for the sport and how it's going, and it gets sort of into the public hands in ways that aren't necessarily what it really is the truth behind it. And I just hope that we can come to terms with these problems out in the equestrian world. And I think maybe what's happening in the cycling is a different matter with more of the steroids to enhance performance. But with the horses, so many times it's to keep them happy and going with such strenuous conditions. There's just so many different reasons. So we'll see what happens after this. And it's a trying time for the sport, jumping, endurance, dressage. It's a trying time for sure.
It certainly is, Heather, and and I think without prejudging the outcome of any of these cases, we always look to get better systems in place, and I know the FEI is very keen on doing this. They are in the midst of a clean sport campaign, and there are videos on the FEI website where we can hear from the Secretary General, Alex McLean, and the Princess Hire, of course, President of the FEI, talking about the measures that the sport is taking to develop a clean sport, basically. And I think there's so many things that one learns from this process, Heather, in terms of, what is the best thing for the horse. Ultimately, we want the welfare of the horse. It's got to be paramount. We want that to be considered first and foremost, and the fairness of competition. So hopefully out of all these debates and all this very deliberate, investigation at all levels, in all countries, that ultimately will have the best thing for the sport and for the horse at the end of it. And I think you had mentioned the reference, which I think would be very helpful, is a destination where everyone is involved. The riders, the owners, the trainers, and the vets particularly can reference what those parameters are. So maybe that will come out of it too. But anyway, that doesn't exist now. There isn't really a source to find out enough information, and even for the veterinarians, they're still also a little in the dark when it comes to a lot of these things. And I hope that they can go in that direction, coming up with some kind of a source of information for everybody to access in this department. I think that's a really smart way to go and think about it, and we'll see about that. Very definitely. All right. Well, good luck to everybody concerned, and we hope to hear of a happy outcome for everyone. But we have a bit of sad news from Italy. A major figure in the on the Italian dressage scene, Luigi Massotto. He actually passed away very tragically in an accident last week, and he was a major influence in Italy. He worked as an international equitation judge as well as a dressage judge, and his contribution to the sport there will be greatly missed as a rider, trainer, and sponsor of riders and events. And he organised many dressage competitions down there in Italy. So our condolences to them, and I'm sure great loss to the Italian dressage community. And that really, Heather, is about the news for this week. we're going to kick on now to Paragon's diary. And I know you took some time off to go down to Aachen, so did Paragon have a chance to have a short break himself?
He did. Yes, he's coming off of last week. I did, a bit of downtime and some hacking out and outside time, and then I did leave. I was gone 3 days this week, so he also had another light week. Next week, I plan on putting the screws to him a little bit again, getting a bit of hard work out of him for another week again next week. So I think we're both sort of looking forward to that and working a bit harder next week again, and then maybe we'll have some more stories about how it's going in this training.
Do you have a competition on his schedule in the near future, Heather?
I really don't. Not in the near future. He's 6 this year, and I'm really looking forward to taking him out in the Prix St. George, and I'm thinking I'll be able to do that at the beginning of next year. He's ready with all the technical things, but I want to build his strength and his confidence and the connection, mostly to build his strength, and I want to take some time for that. So I don't need to put some short-term goals in his way, and I don't need them. He doesn't need them. He's totally confident in new environments, and I have had him in the show ring, and it doesn't faze him much at all. So I think that we can just wait for our debut in the small tour, and most likely it'll be next year.
Terrific. Well, we'll all look forward to that. Thank you, Heather. So we're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, we're going to be hearing from Reese Koffler.
Well, Chris and Heather, it is fantastic to have our friends at Equestrian Life as the title sponsor for the Dressage Radio Show. If you've not been to Equestrian Life yet, you do need to go. In addition to being the official social community of the Horse Radio Network, it is one of the fastest growing horse communities on the internet. It's truly the Facebook for horse people. Keep track of your friends and their horses, the shows they were at, and how they did with Equestrian Life's easy-to-use interface. Expert high-definition videos and live event coverage are the core of the site. Learning from the best in the industry and remote participation in exciting competitions via our in-depth interviews and streaming videos will continue to be an important area of emphasis for Equestrian Life. This community is designed by horse people for horse people and is filled with educational and entertaining video and audio all about our horses. Ride on over to Equestrian Life today. Sign up for free and tell all of your friends. If you love horses, Equestrian Life is the place to be at equestrianlife.com.
All right, well, we're back now with our first guest of the show, Reese Koffler. She's joined us before. She's our young rider to follow, our featured rider, and a very popular one she is too, based here in Lexington, Kentucky. She just went up to Gladstone, Heather, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, and she made her debut at the USEF Festival at Champions. So we got a chance to catch up with Reese and hear how all that went. Well, hi, Reese. Thanks for joining us again. I know you came off a very exciting debut at Gladstone with some fantastic results despite the weather.
We had a wonderful trip. It was a great time. I'll never forget it for sure.
So tell us how it all went. Casper was going up there for his first time, and it wasn't the ideal conditions. Talk us through that week up in New Jersey.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we left Kentucky actually on Saturday before Gladstone started on Wednesday, and we spent the weekend with Jessica Ranthausen doing some training, and it was a nice kind of stopover point for us to let Casper make the big trip. It was about 11 hours to Jessica's, and just kind of relax for the weekend and start a little training on Monday and Tuesday. And on Tuesday afternoon, we headed to Gladstone. It was about a 3-hour trip from Jessica's. And, we pulled up to Gladstone, and that's just an amazing feeling. It's just such a historic place, and so many wonderful riders have trained there, and you feel very humbled pulling up to the gates there. And so we pulled up, and it was pretty quiet. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it was a nice time to get him nice and settled. And it was really fun for me because they put all the Grand Prix horses in the main barn. So I really felt like I had arrived in a sense. The Grand Prix, the young rider horses and junior horses were in the tent on top of the hill. And my mom and I, we laughed a lot because we spent lots of time in the tent on top of the hill. But it was nice to be in the main barn. And we just settled them in for the evening and got settled in our hotel. And on Wednesday was the veterinary inspection. And my trainer, Kathy Conley, came down as well. So I had a great lesson before the veterinary inspection, and everything went fine. So we got a plan for the next day, which changed, and that would continue to change throughout the weekend. Our plans, we had to all be very flexible. And so we had a plan for Thursday morning, and Gladstone, the organizers, were wonderful through the whole event. And we actually drew a time, it was like 10:30 or 11, which is, in my opinion, like the best time you can go to a horse show. You don't have to get up so early, but you can get things rolling before the afternoon. So we really got everybody dressed, and as the Grand Prix horses, we started to all get a little busier with braiding. It started raining and raining harder and harder and harder. And I was okay with the rain. You know, it's a nice thing. And Chris, I know you know what I'm talking about, but in Kentucky, it rains a lot. So we're so green. And I don't have an indoor arena. So, you know, for me, I wasn't so worried about the rain. And we had come off the CDI at Lamplight, where it also poured during the Grand Prix. And they did not call off the show. We rode in the pouring rain, and it was cold pouring rain. I thought, well, at least Gladstone was a little warmer. It's about 20 degrees warmer than Lamplight was, so that was, I guess, helpful. And as we started to ride, actually, my tack roommate, Pierre Saint-Jacques, actually was on his horse in the warm-up, and they pulled us all aside, and the grand jury canceled the show for the day. They said, you know, the footing is dangerous, and it's really wet, and it was very, very wet. So we didn't ride on that Thursday. They canceled it, which became more of a mental thing than a physical thing. You know, in Casper's mind, he got a nice training session all braided up and ready to go. I changed out of my show clothes and into my regular barn clothes, and I had a great training session with Kathy. So that turned out to be a wonderful thing for Friday for the Grand Prix. So we ended up doing that Grand Prix on Friday. And the hardest part, and I think everybody feels this, is when you're getting ready for a competition, you have your mental preparation, and the hardest thing was doing that again. I was very ready to show on Thursday, and I have to say, a little nervous. You know, going into Gladstone and into that big ring is, you know, been a dream of mine for a long time. So to go in was quite an experience, but to almost go in and not go in was very difficult.
That must have been really hard. How do you deal with your nerves in that kind of situation, Reese, when, you know, you're going and then you're not going, and you really have to, you know, switch up mentally?
We did. And honestly, Chris, that was the hardest thing about the whole show was, you know, we were going, we weren't going, they changed our times. That was the hardest part. And I have to be honest, I personally, you know, being one of the younger riders, that hasn't really happened to me very much. So I really leaned on my coach, Kathy Conley, for kind of advice, and she was great. I mean, she just said, you know, it's okay, we'll just prepare, and on that Thursday when we did a lesson, we basically did our whole warm-up like we were going to ride the test the next day. And that was very helpful, because I felt like, okay, you know, on Friday, I felt like I had a real dress rehearsal. Literally, we were all braided and looked beautiful. So that was helpful. But that was, for me, the hardest part of this horse show. Along with the stress of just being there and being at Gladstone, this was an added stress for me. And I think all the riders felt that. So we were all in the same boat. And at the end of the weekend, you just kind of had to learn to go with the punches, really. So, but when we were ready to do the Grand Prix, I think we were all relieved when we actually could compete. It was a great feeling, like, okay, finally we're here to compete and we really want to. And the Grand Jury did a great job. They made, you know, some good decisions and hard decisions, and you know, all our horses came home happy and healthy. So, you know, and that's definitely the right decision.
But disappointing in some ways, though, Reese, not to you know, be able to ride the rest of the competition.
Well, it is. You know, as we all felt as riders and competitors, we certainly all traveled a long way to compete, and you know, that is always disappointing. But you know, on the other hand, the ground jury, that's what their job is, and they made a really tough call. We didn't end up riding the Grand Prix Special, on Sunday because they felt like the footing was dangerous and was going to potentially hurt the horses. So, you have to respect them for that, too. That was a hard call. I know that we all wanted to ride.
Sure. So what was your biggest takeaway then from this experience, Reese?
Well, it was, this is my first time at Gladstone, and it's such a huge event to just be there. So I have to be honest, I was so excited to be there, and in the Grand Prix, I had a very good Grand Prix. I was very happy with it. I had a 66 in change, and which was about a point higher than my average. So I was very excited that I had upped my Grand Prix score, and I still felt like there were things I can make better. I can make the flow of the test go better, and things that we'll work on this summer, which was fun, gave me a little homework. And then when I rode my freestyle, I ended up, I placed 5th in the Grand Prix, and then we rode the freestyle, and actually I was so focused that I didn't even know it was raining when I went up there. It was pouring when we were getting ready. And in my mind, it stopped when I went up there. I think that was just how focused I was. But doing the freestyle in the rain and different footing was a little bit different. I hadn't practiced my core in that kind of rain, so that made it a little bit of a challenge. But Koffler was wonderful, and I knew he'd be fine in the rain. He didn't. He went like a champ. And,
well, that's terrific. So a great experience all round. And now, what does this tell you for the rest of the season? What do you have plans now to do for the rest of the summer, Reese?
Well, that's where we're kind of in the plan making stage. I brought him home, and we're having lovely summer weather now in Kentucky, and I brought him home, and he had spent last week just relaxing and walking. And I was going to give him this week as another break, but he is feeling fine. He's it's kind of wild today on his hack, so he I think he's ready to go back to work. So I'll put him back into work, and I am looking at going to Socrates in September in New York. So that'll give us a CDI before we head to Florida in December.
Right. So you're planning to spend the winter down in Florida again?
Yes, I am. It makes it just it's a great experience, and to be there with all the competitors and all the judges and trainers. I'm really looking forward to it, and I can't say that I'll miss the winter in Kentucky.
So aside from Casper, what else will you be doing this summer, Reese? Do you have a lot of teaching?
I have a lot of teaching. I teach both dressage and eventers, so they keep me really busy. Going to different shows and different events, and certainly the horse park is going to be very busy. Young Riders is coming up, and I look forward to actually just going to be a spectator. My one junior horse is an eventer. He got hurt, so I don't have anyone to coach at Young Riders. I just get to go and watch, and I'm looking forward to that. And just coaching, and then really working on my farm. We're seeming to be almost to the signing the contracts and going to the bank stage of the farm. So that'll keep us really busy this summer.
That's really exciting. Well, you mentioned Young Riders, and this is something we will want to cover on the Dressage radio show, Reese. So maybe we could put you to work there and do a little report for us.
I would love it. Anytime. My pleasure.
All right. You have a job. I'm afraid it's an unpaid job, but it'd be very... very
That's no problem. My pleasure.
Well, it would be great to have that, because I know our listeners really enjoy listening to you, Reese, and we're going to have you coming back on the show again and again through the summer. So keep your mental diary, and we'll continue this story, and we'll certainly put you to work at North American Junior and Young Rider Championships, which are taking place here in Kentucky, as you mentioned, later in July. So thanks again for joining us, Reese, and keep those stories coming.
Well, we certainly wish Reese very good luck with her upcoming season, and we look forward to hearing from her after she's got a few more competitions under her belt. And now we're going to take a break and hear from one of our sponsors.
Now, not every horse needs a supplement, and selecting the right supplement for your horse can be a science. Kentucky Performance Products simplifies your search. You can trust Kentucky Performance Products to give you the most value for your money. KPP offers supplements designed to target specific problems and are made with high-quality ingredients at effective levels. Each product is backed by sound research and a money-back satisfaction guarantee. This week, we'd love to talk to you about Joint Armor. Joint Armor is a well-balanced, scientifically based formula that provides your horse with the building blocks necessary to maintain healthy joints throughout his lifetime. Each scoop provides glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, and manganese sulfate, which is a very important component of cartilage. Joint Armor helps maintain the flexibility and fluid motion found in normal joints. It supports cartilage development and reduces joint deterioration. Best of all, it is concentrated and affordable. One jar will last you 75 days. Learn more about Joint Armor and all the products at kppusa.com. That's Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com.
So, next we're going to have a chat with Mary Wanless. She is an international clinician and trainer. She's written many books on her Ride With Your Mind philosophy. She has video series out. She teaches all over the world, and she's going to tell us a bit about her and what's been going on in her life.
Well, Mary, thank you for joining us on the show today. I know you and Heather go back a long way with your sharing your training philosophy, but we'd love to hear about it today. But I think to set the scene, we should share with our listeners exactly where you are, and I know you're in a very pretty part of England. Tell us a little bit about your environment there and what your situation is in England.
Well, I live in a village called Church Westcott in the Cotswolds, which are about 80 miles northwest of London and near the city of Oxford. And it is a beautiful part of England with rolling hills and wonderful views and great bridle paths to ride your horses on if you want to ride out. And it's a lovely place to live when the sun shines.
And how long have you been doing what you're doing, Mary? Because you teach around the world, don't you?
Yes, I do. Gosh, I mean, I've really been doing what I've been doing pretty much for 30 years. I was a professional in the horse world before then, but in my late 20s I gave up in despair and frustration, gave up riding, that is, in despair and frustration, feeling I wasn't talented, I would never really figure it out, and didn't ride for about 6 months, and then got back into it and made some discoveries that actually set the scene for what is now nearly 2 years' worth of work.
So how did you two meet, Heather?
Well, that was a really fortunate thing for me that one of my students had been to I think it was a USDF conference where one of Mary's longtime students also came to give a lecture at the USDF annual convention, came back to where I was living in Baton Rouge at the time, came back to Baton Rouge, said, we've got to send you out to hear more from this woman, Mary Wanless, and come back and tell us all about what you found out. And so my students sent me out to a teacher training course in California, met Mary there, was completely sold after the first day, and it's just been progress with her ever since. So I'm really happy about that it worked out that way. And and it's just been evolving into more and more learning from Mary, and I think there's never going to be any end to it at all. So that's how it started, maybe 15 years ago, wasn't it, Mary?
I think it was 1994, so yeah, that would be 15 years ago, yes.
Yeah.
And so how would you characterize your philosophy, Mary?
I set out to try and discover what it was that talented riders were doing that they didn't know they're doing. So as a young rider, I always felt that there must be things my teachers weren't telling me. And I kept trying to read books and work out what that might be, and nothing I read or heard really did it for me. So really, I started to ask the question of when somebody's coaching or training and they say a certain statement, what is presupposed? So in other words, if a trainer says to a rider, get the horse on the bit, what is presupposed is that the rider has the skills to do that. And I started trying to break riding down into the kind of chunk sizes that riders could do, because for many riders at sort of club level, that is not a doable size piece. So really, I tried to start to figure out the how of riding rather than the what of riding, because everybody knows what the horse should look like, but not so many people really know how to do it.
So then what were some of the first things, if you remember back to those first days when you were looking into it? What are some of the first major discoveries that were what you figured out they were doing that didn't know they were doing?
So really the first thing was about how the rider uses her abdominal muscles. So nowadays that will be talked about as core strength. And I just hit on this when I was riding a horse for a client a couple of times a week that jogged a lot. And most of the time I would pull on the reins, it would pull on the reins, and it would just keep jogging. But every now and again I could stop it jogging, just in an instant, and I didn't know what I'd done. And it took me quite a while of having those occasional symptoms to work out what I was doing, and I realized it was to do with my abdominal muscles, which was quite a shock at the time because I'd been told to use my back, but never been told to use my front. Not that use your back made much sense to me as an idea, but anyway, having discovered about abdominal muscles and what I then turned bearing down, it grew from there.
And that could be something that someone with natural talent or who's ridden for enough years, past the point of their beginning education would become so naturally doing that they would be very unaware of it.
Absolutely. So good riders can be doing that with their body and many other things with their body, but they totally don't know they're doing. And that for them are basically a given. They might be saying, well, I'm just sitting here, but they're just sitting here involves factors that average riders don't have in their version of just trying to sit there.
So how many books have you written now, Mary? It's 5 or 5 books?
It's 6. I've written 6 books. By Christmas 1980, I realized that I knew enough to write a book. I knew things that were really significant for the horse world and that really deserved to be out there and deserved to be known. And it actually took me 7 years to write that first book and get it published. That was 1987. And there's been another 5 since then. One is more about factors around saddle fit and complementary medicine with dentistry and various things like that. But the rest of them are on the biomechanics of riding.
So who would be your main audience then, Mary? Are you trying to get to the younger people as they come into the sport, as they reach adulthood and are more sort of self-aware of their body? Or are you trying to translate this language to riders who, have been doing their own thing, developed their own habits, and just, as you say, you've identified that they have talent? Where do you find that your main clientele is now?
It's very varied now. To begin with, it was definitely people who really knew they had problems, really knew they were struggling, and really knew that what their trainers were telling them on a regular basis wasn't working for them. And there would still be some of my clientele who come into that category. There are more and more talented riders, some good up-and-coming young riders, many riders at club level as well as more elite level. So it's really across the board, but it's riders who question more than anything else.
Yeah, interesting. And when you saw Heather, when you first saw Heather, it's 15 years ago, what did you see in her that worked so well in your partnership with her?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, to begin with, I saw a rider who was actually doing a lot wrong in terms of what she was doing with her body, but obviously had a body that could do it really right. And within a short time of us working together, when she'd begun to realize that the things I was saying worked, I think she became a rider with huge dedication in terms of how she worked on her body and her skills and started discovering things. So I think she's worked with tremendous dedication and really developed for herself her understanding of the importance of what the rider does with her body. But she had a terrific body to do it in to begin with, even though she wasn't actually using it that well.
Yeah, I know. When I grow up, I want a body like Heather Blitz and a rider.
Yeah. Well, I just admit the fact that I'm a 5'3" midget and I sit about 14'2", only about the same as Heather sits 17'2".
Well, I'm 5'9", but I don't. It's going to be a long time before I ever get into Heather's position. So.
Well, it is doable. It's very, very doable. It's not just something that I subconsciously do. I keep it pretty conscious level. Mary, I saw you at a number of teacher training courses before I actually got to ride with you. And then when I did ride with you, my first lesson in maybe lesson and a half, I was just really still shocked by what it felt like to make really core changes in my body. And now, of course, I work with riders also much with your system. And I have a question for you. Do you find that it's harder to make the lower level riders change, or do you find it more challenging for the upper level riders that you get to work with to get them to agree to changes?
Gosh, I think it depends on the person. Within upper level riders, there are certainly some people who are always aware that there's somebody younger and more talented and with more money coming up behind them, and they need all the help they can get. And there are some upper-level riders hanging on with their fingernails to the skills that they have, desperately worried about changing them. So within that client group, you have a huge range, as you do, too, at every other level. I mean, it's a hard question to answer. I think it probably really depends on the person more than the level.
Yeah.
And I think, Mary, with any sport, it obviously the earlier you can catch people in their developing their skills and riding habits, the better. So when you're looking at young people, you're watching at pony clubbers and young riders around the world, and they all have different training regimes. What would your message be to impart this philosophy of yours, but what would your message be to the trainers to try and convey that philosophy as early as possible?
Gosh, I mean, my sense is that we really want to get hold of kids before they're 12. And I think at about the age of 12, the rot sets in when someone in Pony Club probably says, right now, girls, now let's get the ponies on the bit. And that's the beginning of the end. And I would really try and steer trainers and teachers and coaches away from really getting kids neurotic about where their horse's head is, and really teaching them the baselines of how to organize their body. If we can teach a kid to sit well enough that the pony's natural response is to come up through its back and reach into the rein, then the kid never gets paranoid about getting the horse's head down, never starts fiddling and pulling, and never has to unlearn that later in life. And I think unlearning that is the hardest thing on earth for a more mature rider.
So, Mary, I could agree with you, too, in that there's so much obsession on what's happening with the head, and it's in front of our vision field, and it's in our hands, and it's it's how sort of we're geared to fix things. And what do you think is some of the most common things that does to riders' bodies? What are some of the more common mistakes that you have to fix?
Well, it gets riders thinking about the head, thinking about the hand, the arm, the shoulder girdle, worried about the contact, and riding sometimes as if they barely existed from the shoulder girdle down. Whereas I really want to try and keep a rider's attention on her pelvis, on her contact with the horse's back, on what's happening in the horse's back underneath her, how she stabilizes herself on the horse's movement. And if we can teach a rider to be really thinking about how to shape the horse's back and get the back up under her, rather than thinking about how to get a horse's head down, we've changed everything for that rider.
And there can be a lot of funny language out there as far as what you hear is, how to get the horse's back up, can't there?
Yes, I suppose it is, because everybody is so obsessed by where the horse's head is, and the shape of the horse's back, and whether the back is hollow or whether the back is a firmer, higher surface underneath you, really determines how his whole body works. That phrase "over the back" that people use, that really talks about whether the push of the horse's hind leg is translated in that chain of muscles over its croup, under the panels of the saddle, and up the crest to each of its ears. So you're trying to show riders how to make that happen, how to feel if it is happening, how to know what to do if it isn't happening, and how to change the horse's body underneath them by how they use their own body.
So when you're traveling around the world teaching clinics, Mary, what do you see as the difference in terms of the cultures and the stages that people are at with their riding, where you are able to interrupt the habits that they've formed over the years? Where do you see the differences there between, say, Europe and the States?
In America, I think there are more people whose confidence outweighs their competence. In the UK, there are more people who could justifiably have more confidence for their level of competence. And I don't see that many people who have their confidence and their competence in sync. Even if that confidence boils down to, I know if I really work on this, I can learn it, rather than, I know I'm brilliant. So that would be one thing. In America, I really notice that in the West Coast, there are more round-backed, more laid-back riders who are kind of just hanging out, man. And on the East Coast, especially I think in the New England, more northern areas on the East Coast, there are many more uptight riders who tend to be more hollow-backed. So I think there is a real East Coast, West Coast difference in America.
Another great thing, Mary, that you've helped me with in my career is you're working with instructors to learn how to teach and giving them teaching methods and the use of language and the importance of how you get feedback from your students. And tell us a little bit about that and your teacher training.
So I do a lot of coach education, and that is really dear to my heart. And how people talk about riding and riding skills, I think, is really important. The conventional language we use, things like sit deep, use your back, guide the horse forward, tend to make people respond in various ways that I think really aren't helpful. And if we can look much more precisely at the patterns operating in the rider's body and use much more precise language to describe what works, then we can save an awful lot of people from interpreting those phrases in ways that they really weren't meant to be interpreted. So I think our language in the horse world is very, very woolly, and I really like to train teachers on how to look so they have a really good diagnostic eye when they see a rider and a horse in front of them, and how to use words in ways that really help the rider to change what she's doing and how the horse responds.
Well, it's made just such a gigantic difference in my career, and I'm just so thankful to have met you when I did, and I'm just really glad for you to be on our show today and to give us a bit of what you're doing and what you do. And what are your plans for the near future? Do you have anything other than our symposium that we'll be doing together here in Esbjerg on August 2nd?
Yes. That's right. So we've got the symposium in Esbjerg on the 2nd of August. We've got a symposium in Leighton Buzzard in the UK on the 24th of October. I've got various courses happening at my place in the Cotswolds during the summer and teacher training at the end of that season in late September. And I'll be coaching again in the US through the winter. So things keep trucking. More coaching, more symposiums, and I really keep looking for ways to get my information out into the horse world. I really think it's beneficial for so many people at all levels. And I will keep working tirelessly to do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us, Mary, and I hope to see you soon, and you take care then.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was terrific fun listening to Mary, Heather. I mean, there's just so much wisdom there and so much theory behind the practical, and I'm sure you learnt that as you were getting to know Mary, Heather, and working with her, that all her practical is based on sound foundation and theory too.
It is. There's just an unlimited supply of information in that woman, and it's really quite incredible. And she's just always looking into more and more research too. Every time I talk with her, she's got more, and it's never ending in a very, very fantastic way.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, I'm sure we'll have Mary on in the future. And you're embarking, as you mentioned, on a symposium tour again with her. You've done several in the past and some more lined up. And that next one, we want to remind everyone, will be in Esbjerg, Denmark, where you are right now. And that's in August, didn't you say, Heather?
Yeah, it's on a Sunday, August 2nd. And we're taking you can buy tickets online, and you can contact me for more information. And it's on it's on a Sunday, August 2nd, here in Esbjerg, Denmark. So we've had two of those in the States, about 3 of them in the UK, and they're just highly successful with the 2 of us. And in the States, we also have Hillary Clayton on board also. So they're really nice symposiums, very effective, a lot of information there.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Heather. We wish you well with that. We know we can find that information on your website, heatherblitz.info. And now we're going to come to your training tip of the week, Heather.
Okay. Well, this week, I think I was just going to describe a little bit about how I ride half passes and how I teach half passes to my students. And I have a lot of success with riding them myself, and also with describing them to my students to present them as simply as haunches in. And I think what can get confusing to people in half passes is they really get the sideways aspect in their mind a lot, and they end up riding quite sideways, which can cause problems with perhaps the haunches leading, or maybe not being able to bend enough to the inside. I think if a half pass tends to look sideways, it maybe depends on at what angle you are watching it. If the horse is going on a diagonal sort of away from you and you are in the corner of the arena, it might really appear to be quite sideways. If you are looking at the half pass from the point where the half pass will end, so the horse is coming straight towards you, it is less apparent that it's sideways, more apparent that it's a haunches in. If you make a haunches in going down the long side and you make 3 tracks, the bend, let's say, haunches in left, so the horse is bent left, haunches are to the left, and the shoulders are on the track, and you take that long side and you just position it across the diagonal, and you ride that same 3-track left bend, left haunches on that diagonal, is the same thing as making a left half pass. And as the levels go up in difficulty, of course, that diagonal line can get more steep. So in the Grand Prix, it goes all the way from the corner to, let's say, from M to B. So a very short diagonal, and that gets more difficult to make an even more steep diagonal. But it still technically could be ridden as a haunches in on a line, whether it's on the long side or a shallow diagonal or a steep diagonal. So it tends to make it a little more clear that it's not a whole nother world of, oh my gosh, now I've really got to go sideways. Most riders I find can make haunches in quite well, and they go into half pass and they get a little bit of freak out thinking, oh, now I have to add sideways. So it kind of depends on your perspective where you're watching the half pass. But if you ride it like a haunches in on diagonal, I think you'll have better luck.
That's great, thank you, Heather. Well, the
okay.
only thing I'm short of is a horse. Otherwise, I'd be trying that out.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thanks so much, and we want to just mention that next week on the show we're going to be catching up with Klaatje van Andel of Dressage Direct, who's going to be joining you to review Aachen, because that will of course have been the highlight of this week, and. I know you spent some time up there and caught the Grand Prix, and Klaatje is still there for the rest of the show, so we look forward to your combined review of the week. And also we'll be hearing from Catherine Haddad, who was there with 2 horses, wasn't she, Heather? I think you caught up with Catherine while she was there, and she's agreed to come on the show. Yep,
we'll be hearing from her hopefully next week.
Terrific. And you can follow our show notes on dressageradio.com as always, and we always want to hear from you, so send us your feedback. Leave a voicemail at 270-803-0025. That number again is on the website, or you can email either Heather or myself. Heather's email is horseradionetwork.com, or you can reach me at chris@horseradionetwork.com. And don't forget, there is a segment on the show called It's Your Call, where we want to hear from you. Anything that's hot and topical on your mind, please leave us a message at 270-803-0025 with your name. And remember that the Dressage Radio Show has a fan page on Facebook, and there's a link to that on our website. And you can always follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. And Twitter is becoming quite the thing. And of course, if you follow us on Twitter, you'll get to hear when the shows are posted, and all of our shows too. We encourage Heather to tweet as well, and I know you try and work on keeping your blog. I remind you every week about your blog, and you're also tweeting, aren't you, Heather?
Well, I actually blogged last week, and now I have to write myself a note to do more tweeting.
There you go. And don't forget that you can go to Heather's website, heatherblitz.info, for that blog and also get information on any clinics that Heather has scheduled. We would like to thank our sponsors, Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com, and of course, the Dressage Radio Show is presented by Equestrian Life, our official community, and that can be found at equestrianlife.com.
And you can see all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network by going to horseradionetwork.com. This week on the Eventing Radio Show, they had the eventing legend Ginny Elliott. So that's an interview you really don't want to miss.
That was a lot of fun, Heather, I have to tell you. You know, we've had a lot of these old legends. They won't mind me calling them that. You know, we've had Lucinda Green and Mark Todd, and then we had Ginny the other day, and it was great to hear her because she now coaches the Irish event team and keeping very busy as the Irish coach. And, you know, the Irish team are doing a lot better these days in eventing, and she has engaged Ferdy Alberg to help them with their dressage.
Wow, well, lucky team. That sounds like a really promising combination then.
It really is. So that was a great interview with Ginny. Don't forget, as Heather says, you can catch all of the shows on horseradionetwork.com. So, Heather, and this is a holiday weekend over here, and do you have anything planned?
Well, no, I hate to miss it. July 4th is a blast of a holiday, and it's too bad I'm over here. But I don't have any plans for this week other than sort of getting back into the grindstone and putting in some good work on the horses.
Well, before we go, I know you don't celebrate July 4th, but I know after the last show we recorded last week, you mentioned that you were going to go off to the beaches in Denmark there and play with the witches. What was that all about?
You know, I wish I knew all the details about it. All I know is they make a bunch of bonfires and they used to burn witches. So now it's turned into, of course, just the bonfire part. But it's a big party on the beach. And, of course, the daylight lasts so long that it's nice to be out and have an excuse to be out on the beach until midnight with the beautiful sunset that lasts so long. So I don't know the details, but it's a nice time out. So we did that.
You didn't actually see any witches then?
No witches. No, I didn't have any sightings. I had my camera, though. I was ready.
Which brings me into an opportunity to plug your photography. For those of you who know Heather, know what a great rider and trainer Heather is, she also has another skill, and that's as a photographer. If you go to her website, heatherblitz.info, you'll find a page for her photography. And Heather, you're a great photogapher. And you inspire my painting.
You're kind. You're very kind.
It's true. It's true.
When beginner's luck.
when the day comes that you have to hang up your boots, you know, you can always pick up the camera, and you've got a second career.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I enjoy it. I do. It's nice to have a hobby.
It's a great hobby, isn't it? And as you know, you inspire my painting because I do a bit of painting, and you get some beautiful photos of the light there in Denmark, which is very special because it's light for so late at night. And you inspire my paintings too. I hope I do them justice.
You do a beautiful job. And I know those are online too for everyone to go see. You also have a gallery, right? That's
right. Yeah, I do on my website, chrisestafford.com. All right, Heather. Well, thanks for that, and we would look forward to meeting you next week to hear all about Aachen. So until then,
and good luck, and mind your riding.